Hi, everyone. Yay. Welcome to the end of, is it end of week 3? Yes. Great work this week. Issues are getting harder. You're doing great. Hang in there. I'm excited to see demos. Which group would like to go first this week? Is Abby going to volunteer her group?
We can do it.
All right, Karen and Abby, do it.
All right, let me just get my thing started here. So let me share my screen. Oh, sorry, just bear with me one moment. Apparently I didn't shut down my previous local server.
No problem.
All right, so for this week, Abby and I were tasked. Oh, that's special. Oh, nope.
Oh,
no. So sorry, can I do it? You did say we had to do a Git pull, right? You recommended us to do a Git pull for this one?
Could you demo on production, do you think? Let me send you the link. Let's see. I posted it this morning.
Wait, nope, it's not on this.
Oh, Caitlin just shared it in the chat. It's on, if you need to find it, it's on the project brief as well, but Caitlin just shared it in the chat.
Oh, in the chat over here.
In the Zoom chat. I can send it in Slack if that's easier too.
No, this works. Okay, so this is what Abby and I were tasked to do. So let's just say a user wanted to start a list, and they basically in their household, they wanted to basically share the same mutual list. In order to do that, the individual that started the list would have to share their token. And once that's shared, basically both of them can access the same list. Now the token would be saved inside local storage on both the devices that it's been accessed on. And Abby will actually get into the nitty-gritty bits of the code, but I'll just show what it looks like on the front end. Let's have another chat over here. Okay, anyways, so let's just say, I'm gonna just create a new list right now. And obviously our list is empty. So let me go to add groceries. And let's go chocolate. Add item. Let's add another thing. Soap, because soap. All right. Now, if I go to the grocery list, it's there. So if someone else wants to access this list, what we would have to do is, let me just pull up what token we're using over here. Strum S and GOP. Yes, of course. So then let's just say I'm on a different device now. Actually, let me just pull it up on, out of curiosity, is local storage cross-browser, or is it different for each browser?
Oh, I think it'll be different for each browser.
Okay, let's do that. Well, it didn't really matter there. So Strum, oh my God, I totally forgot what it was.
I think it's Sturm. Sturm.
Sturm.
Where is it?
Sturm. S and GOP.
GOP. There we go.
Rolls off the tongue.
I know, right? So first, actually, let's do what I thought it was. Okay, and I say join existing list. it will give you incorrect token. We decided to use naughty stack. Wow. Sounds weird.
Maybe notice.
Anyways.
Maybe it's notice stack, like notify.
No. Oh yes, that. But if I had spelt it correctly, what would happen is I would join this list.
I think it's Sturm with a U. Like Sturm.
It's with a U.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
There we go.
Okay, perfect. So now it takes me to the list, but I'm not quite sure. I swear this should be working.
You are
Let me go into
experiencing
this.
exactly what I was trying to solve in my PR today. So if you just reload
really?
the whole thing,
Please.
then it will work. Yeah, I haven't merged yet because I want to implement what you suggested.
Okay.
So it's not
I
working
see.
yet, but it will.
Okay, so please stand by. This will be working, but what you will see is that it is adding to the local storage, and it's not giving us that error. Now I'm wondering if I actually, Daria, would this be working if I did this? Candy, like, would it add to the list though?
I think once you reloaded your app in the browser, it should be working.
Okay. Yes, but it didn't add Candy.
I think
So
you
that
didn't,
is something that
like,
we're going to
add
have
it
to
at
work
it.
on. I didn't add it.
Because I didn't see Candy like disappear. So if you add item, there we go. No.
Okay, there you go. So it is adding over there. We're almost there in terms of this feature. It is going to be fixed soon. But I'm going to pass it on to Abby in terms of how we actually achieve this. So.
Yeah. Are you gonna keep sharing the screen, or do you want me to share the screen? Okay. I was just gonna pull up our component. Okay, so we had to create a form input where a user could input a token and gain access to someone else's shopping list. So we went ahead and created a new component called ShareToken, which we embedded in the welcome component. So as of right now, as you saw, it's just sitting right under the create a new list in the welcome component. So first off, like as you can see right there, we pseudocoded and kind of like thought it out that, you know, we need to grab user input, interact with the database, pull the tokens from the collection, and then compare the user input to any of the tokens, and then most likely like an if-else statement in there. So always easier said than done. At first, we were thinking of using the use collection hook or use collection data hook. And we were kind of stuck on that for a while. We're like looking through the documentation. And then like I just started thinking kind of in terms of like the other features that I had worked on. For instance, with Caitlin, when we added an item, we interacted with the database and was able to add the item that way. So I was like, maybe we can do it that way. So as you can see right here, we imported the database just like in the other component, and then interacted with the collection through that way. And then as you can see, we called the get method. And when I was looking for like what method to use, where also popped up. And I don't know if it's more of like a preference of like which one to use, of which one would be like cleaner, but in my mind, like the get and then the then, it just like, it made more sense in my mind to use that method. So this right here, so we get the collection, and then basically what this is doing is that if the user input is not there, like if it's like empty, like there's nothing in the database that is what the user entered in, then it's going to throw an error. And then if else, like if it is in there, if it's a success, then it will set the user input to local storage, which will then, it will push the user to the shopping list and give them access to that like shopping list. So talking about in terms of like the other features that I was working on like last week with Daria, how Lewis had suggested like the use history hook, and that's where that came in at right here. So kind of like how I went about it, like we are just like, okay, kind of thinking about like what we've already done and kind of, I mean, it kind of sounds like I'm like, you know, the stereotypical copy and paste, but that's always kind of like when I'm coding, I'm always like, like what can we use that we've already used before? So that's, and then as you can see, Lewis had a great suggestion with Notice Stack or Naughty Stack to implement that. So as you can see, we just followed, like the documentation was awesome. We kind of just used what they had and put it right in our if else statement. So it will pop up on the screen, a nice little snack bar, whether or not that the token is in there or not, or like if there is a token with that name. And then, yeah, I think I don't on the, and as you can see, this is how it renders. And so that I don't ramble anymore, is anything you want to add, Corinne?
No, I think that was perfect. Yeah, thank you. Awesome job.
And tell me, let's see, you were trying to implement like a toast or a snack bar with Material UI at first, and was that challenging, or was Lewis suggesting just something different?
Oh, so for some reason we needed to install Material UI to use like Notice Stack. So we were like went straight into Notice Stack and used that as well, even though it didn't say in the documentation that we had to. It wasn't working for us like on the first go around. So
I see.
And it worked.
Cute. So what would you say was what felt like the most challenging part of this particular issue, you think?
For us, it was mainly, well, for me, I think was basically assessing, basically playing with the data and trying to understand, like sorting through the data, seeing whether that a particular token existed. So my solution was going to be like creating a collection of all the tokens, which I think is like it's a common enough practice, but I would have liked to avoid it, and luckily Abby came up with a much better solution. I'm sorry, Abby, you were going to say something?
I was just saying that I think for me, I don't know why, but I was like getting confused as to like the local storage versus like the database, and like kind of like, okay, like we need to interact with the database first, but like if when the user, like when we set the item, like their user input, if it's like successful and there is something in that database with that token, like the same token, and we set at local storage, but isn't that like on their local computer, and how is it like interacting with the database to get their shopping list? You know, like that's why I was like, I think I was overthinking it too much, or just like, I don't know.
It is, I think it is a weird concept too, like the concept of having, okay, I have this information that's basically stored in my browser, right? Versus something that's living in my database, right? Somebody else can easily access, but on my browser, they don't have that same thing.
Yeah, like, and I don't know, like I just felt it was just really weird for me initially. Just I played with like RESTful APIs, and it's just you just do a fetch call, and then it gives you a JSON object, and you basically, if you want to do a for each and go through the root level of each of the keys, if it's an object. So I was going into it with that mindset, but I guess Firebase has its own restrictions on how you can play around with it and query with it. So
What other questions do people have or comments or?
Ooh, I had a quick question. With the React component, I noticed that you had like an empty tag. Is that common practice, or is there a reason behind that?
sorry, an empty
Yeah,
tag?
it was like it was just like an open close bracket, and then
Oh, I believe that was a fragment that I was using, basically the shortcut for the React fragments,
gotcha.
because it needed one parent component. Element, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
You are-
gotcha. That makes sense.
You're right. Yep.
Just came across that for the first time recently too. That's really cool.
Yep. Other questions or comments? Nope. Looks great. I love the little notification. It's really
Great
nice.
job, team.
Super cute. All right, Daria and Caitlin, you're up.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and share. Oh boy, what am I trying to share? I think this one. Okay. Okay, so can everyone see my browser?
Yep.
So I'm going to take a page out of Abby's book and remind everyone of our issue this week. So the 3 acceptance criteria that we had this week, Daria and I were trying to first show an error message if the user tries to submit a new item that has the exact same name as an existing item on the list. And then also show an error message if it's the same item with different capitalization or punctuation. And then finally, the user's original input should be what gets saved in the database. So with that, I'll go ahead and just demo very quickly what we were able to accomplish. So if you see here, this is a shopping list. Currently, it has olive oil, eggs, milk, and cumin on the list. And if we try to add something, I will try and duplicate milk on the list. First, I'll try and just replicate it exactly as it is on the list. And if I try and add it, we get an error message, again, using no to stack that says this item is already on your list. And then if I'm like really want milk and I try and like put it in all caps and with a lot of exclamation points, it'll still register that it's the same item on our list and we still get that no to stack notification down here on the bottom. So the way that we did this, most of our initial work on this was done in our addItems.js component. So first we have added in here a function that checks based on the item. It will use a little bit of regex to check and compare first it'll put the item all to lowercase in order to compare it to the item name in the list, again, using regex to compare all the letters and only compare it to something that is actually a letter that is on the list. And after we've compared the item that the user is inputting into the input field against the list, then in our submit grocery item, function, which was already existing in this component, we're just kind of calling, let's see, we're checking the list, the Firebase list against this existing item using that function. And then if the resulting array has a length of less than 0, then, or sorry, greater than 0, then the user will get an error that says this item is already on your list. And they'll get an error message from Notice Stack. Otherwise, that, as we already were doing before, the item will be added to Firebase as however the user has input it. So this was kind of just the basic functionality that we added. We actually ran into quite a few bugs that Daria was a superstar and called on Lauren to help a lot figuring out the bugs. So I'll go ahead and pass over to Daria to discuss some of those errors and bugs that we were running into this week.
Thanks, Caitlin. I'm going to, so first I'm going to explain how those bugs actually happened and how we spotted them, and then I'm going to walk you through the code that actually helped us fix them. So first of all, when we were dealing with the item list, our main kind of challenge was how do we actually get the items with a particular name from the database? And at first we were trying to call the database with whatever item we were trying to add, but it proved to be very challenging. And then we decided that we should probably just have our list of items as state locally, and then compare the item that we want to add against that state. And at that point, we realized that it would be probably more efficient to only call the database once in our app component and then have this list that we then pass as props to other components. And that way we don't have to do multiple calls to the database, and we have just an array that we can work with as opposed to filtering through the database. So here in the app component, I actually have a few lines of old code just for the sake of explanation. The way that we were originally calling the database was by using this use collection hook that called the database using the user token from local storage. So when we launched the app, we first checked the local storage for the token, and then we used the token to query the database. Now, the problem that we were having was the first time the user opens the app, they don't have a token yet. And in our welcome component right here, we have a function that sets up the token and puts it into local storage. But the query to the database is happening in the app component. And the app component does not know that we now have token, because it only checks for it once when it runs, when it renders the first time. So what was happening was, after creating a new list, we were essentially calling the database with an empty string instead of the token. And Firebase was returning an error, and the whole app crashed. So we tried different ways of dealing with that. First of all, Lauren suggested using a default value to have some sort of string for when we don't have a token. And that was a great idea, but with the use collection hook, what happened was we essentially were setting up a database with the token that was that default value. So the string default value was our token. And we got stuck with this grocery list that was actually not what we wanted. And then we decided to use the use token as a state, because that way, once the token updated, we had a way of communicating that across all the components. So here we have state for this token value that we initiate by trying to get it from local storage. And if there is no token, then we just have an undefined value here. And for our list and for the states of loading and error, we also decided to use it as state as opposed to just using them as constants that we used with the use collection hook. Then in order to talk to the database, we had to get rid of the use collection hook entirely and call it with kind of like in a more conventional way, I don't know, without using a hook. And here in the use effect, we are trying to see if there is a token, and if there is one, then we're calling the database using this token. And this onSnapshot method, what it does is it keeps track of any updates in the database. So essentially we are subscribing to get any new values that get added to the database. And then we were doing pretty much the same thing that we had done before with going through the values that we get from the database and using this function to remove all the unnecessary quotation marks and whatnot. And then we use the resulting array as our state that we then passed to our components, item list here and add items here. And we also passed the token to them. Now, since we have this onSnapshot method, we also need to unsubscribe from it once we want to unmount the app component to make sure that we don't have a few watchers that just go on top of each other and do the same thing after we re-render the app component, if that makes sense. So here in the return statement of the use effect hook, we do exactly this cleanup by calling this function that we declared earlier. And finally, we have our dependency array, which makes sure that this code is only executed if our dependency changes. So the use effect hook essentially only runs if we have a change in our token state. So in the welcome component, we added this set token method that takes the token that we're putting into local storage and passes it to our app component. And I was trying to do the same thing for the ShareToken component earlier today to make sure that if the user already has a token, it is treated the same way as a new token. So that was my lengthy explanation for how we solved this problem that didn't really, like, it wasn't really directly related to our feature, but I think that it actually solves a lot of problems that we would have in the future. So questions, comments?
Nice work. Fantastic explanation. I think Daria and I were going back and forth and like trying to figure out
Yeah,
for a long time.
I think that Lauren, you got caught up in this, like, why is it not working? Yeah, it was very emotional for all of us.
Yeah, that was awesome. Out of curiosity, when we did the merge yesterday, there was an issue where I believe on Con's on submit handler was no, it wasn't that. It was on subscribe, I believe. Where's the an app, I believe?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So unsubscribe. Is the reason why you were having the issue was because like it wasn't creating the like assigning a function to unsubscribe in some cases?
Yes. So the way it was initially set up, we had this like let unsubscribe here, and then we tried to do something, and only if we had something from the database, then we assigned value to unsubscribe. So if there was nothing returned from the database, the unsubscribe variable was empty, so it was not a function that we could run, and that was the error.
That totally makes sense. I really liked the fact that you, I mean, you kind of deconstructed the use collection. Was that the hook?
Yeah, I actually, I probably should have looked at what use collection does and just kind of copy that, but it didn't occur to me at the moment.
No, well, it seems to do a really good job. So yeah, I really like that. And I really loved your explanation about it. Yeah.
Thanks.
I have a question and just a comment. You guys did awesome. So for me, this is maybe this is bad. This is the first time I'm seeing like using unsubscribe. And so is that something that like you guys knew like and you knew to use it, or like I was like, oh, what's this? And I had to like look it up.
Honestly, before this, I had probably used it like once. But if you look up the docs for use effect, in like if you see the docs for that, there are two options when you're using this hook. You can use it with something that you just need to happen when the component mounts. But if you're using some sort of listener, like we are here, then you need to remove it before the component unmounts. And this is called cleanup, and it's usually done through this return statement.
Yeah, I might be misremembering this, but I think Lewis left a comment on code review saying that this is good practice to get in the habit of doing.
Yeah, I believe in, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this like not a direct replacement, but kind of what component did unmount, or that lifecycle was being used for? So
yeah.
that's why this is being used here.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Nice work, everybody. Excellent demos. Really wonderful technical explanations, everyone, for what your code was doing under the hood. I loved, Caitlin, I loved how you talked about what the regex was doing. That was fantastic. Daria, great explanation of what was going on and all of the hurdles that you overcame. That's really great to be able to do that. And for sure, you'll be able to use those skills in interviews going forward, and you'll just wow your interviewers. So good job. All right, let's pass it off to Lewis.
Okay, cool. Share. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh, so before we start the learning module, I kind of wanted to get a gauge of how you guys have been pair programming. What tools have you guys been using, or how has it been sharing screens or working together without this learning module? Just to get like a little sense of how you guys have been working.
I, with my partners, have mostly been screen sharing, which has been a little difficult because Zoom doesn't like my computer. Screen sharing's been a little challenging, but yeah, like taking turns, one person sharing their screen and doing all of the like typing the code, and the other person kind of leading the, ideas of coding.
Okay, cool. And does everyone feel like they're spending 5 hours on the work? Does everyone feel like they're spending too much time each week on the project or anything? Or is the time a good amount?
Yeah, it's been pretty good so far for me.
Yeah,
And,
let us know. We've been getting some feedback that some people are spending a lot of time, and like it's great if you want to spend a lot of time, but let us know if it feels like too much time so that we can help figure that out, because we don't want it to be like an unsustainable amount of time.
Cool. So yeah, today's learning module will be on pair programming. And very similar to what Caitlin said, pair programming is when two or more developers, they kind of sit in front of a computer and they take turns writing code. There's usually like two roles, like was mentioned, a driver, which is someone who's actually writing the code and explaining, trying to verbalize what they're working on. And the navigator, which is the person who's paying attention, and also someone who's trying to collect information, like if the driver has a question about something that they need answered, instead of stopping to research, the navigator can usually be more effective in finding questions online or answering those types of things. So pair programming, you have to think of it's not like one person talking to someone else. It's more like a two-way street where you're both helping each other. So it's something much more collaborative. Each of you have roles that you each have to fill, and they're all both equally as important. So with pairing remotely, this is probably the simplest setup that we can do with remote pairing. As was mentioned, doing a screen share or a video call, and then the driver starts sharing the screen while coding, and the navigator's watching and providing feedback and asking questions. And then at some point during the pair programming, the roles will switch and the navigator become the driver. And again, this cycle repeats as you keep switching roles and helping each other out. And there's a ton of amazing tools. I think everyone here uses VS Code. This is a really awesome extension called Live Share that you should definitely check out. I can even show you really quickly if you want later on. It's just an extension. I can just send you a link, and it's basically like turning your code into Google Docs so everyone can work together. It's pretty nice. And also just to remind you that pair programming has a certain mindset. When you're doing pair programming, you should come in with an open mind. It's not, as I said, it's not really about teaching or mentoring someone. It's more about discussion and helping each other out. You should both be learning from the opportunity. Shouldn't be one person talking to someone else. And specifically for drivers, they're the ones that are trying to explain what they're saying as opposed to telling the other person what to do. So it's more like asking for feedback. And the navigators, same thing, is asking and not just telling, to provide better communication and collaboration. So yeah, I as asked earlier, sounds like your pair programming is going well so far, but does anyone have any other comments that they want to mention about pair programming?
I just, yeah, like I love pair programming. It definitely helps me as a better coder, and I can actually understand other people's thought process. What I really enjoy about it is the fact that you somewhat have an audience also, like that is looking at what you're doing higher level. I say this to all my pair programming partners, that like it's like I go down a rabbit hole a lot, and it's like when you're walking your dog and your dog's sniffing something it should not, and you're like, okay, don't do that, maybe just step away from it and then let's think this through. And I think that's very useful. And like I know that I get very mixed up in my mind, so like explaining, I think that's very good, like a good practice for someone like me, being able to explain something and break things down.
Yeah, like same here. Like I know I need a lot of practice and help explaining my code. I like kind of had some bad experiences in boot camp explaining my code. So I kind of like scared me, and now I'm like overthink of like what I should say, what I should explain. Like it, does everyone already know what that means? Like I don't know. So like I overthink it too much. So this is like super helpful for me to get that practice in.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
Yeah,
navigator.
sorry. I have a question. I'm not sure if the answer is probably going to be like just practice it more, but whenever I'm pair programming, I almost feel like my IQ drops like 20 points. Like all of a sudden, it's much harder to think while you're trying to explain your thoughts to the other person. Like, is there something that helps with that?
Yeah, I think it's just time and keep doing it. You'll get better. It's like public speaking. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And I wouldn't worry about it, because I also have trouble explaining things all the time when pair programming, because I just have trouble vocalizing what I'm actually typing at the same time. You can't focus on two things at once sometimes, so you'll be like coding and you can't think of words. So it's pretty common.
It's also like,
That's good
Oh,
to
go
know.
ahead, Jonathan.
oh no, please.
I was just going to agree with Lewis. It is really hard to talk and type at the same time. And pairing is really awesome. It's really awesome for improving your technical communication. That's why like this is such a great group to practice this with, because everyone's so supportive and like great. So this is a really safe space to just go for it and really practice that technical communication while you're pairing.
Yeah, plus one to everything. And I think like definitely cut yourself some slack. I think we've all been there with pair programming and like just trying to talk aloud, but also like trying to verbalize your thoughts and communicate them in a way that makes sense actually takes time and intention. Like you have to really think about that. That's why it's a lot easier. Like if I'm cooking, it's a lot easier if I just cook the recipe and the meal myself, rather than having to like explain what I'm doing to someone else and get them to like help out. So yeah, definitely takes time.
That makes sense. I was also wondering, like in the wild at work, what portion of your time is spent pair programming?
Well, at my company, I don't think we do it enough, but we try. We have a lot of meetings. So when we have a major project, we usually have like weekly meetings where we talk about blockers and stuff. But we don't do as much pair programming as we should, just because I'm working at a small company, so the teams aren't that large, and we all have our separate sections. But it's different for different companies. I'm not sure what Lauren and Jonathan can say.
Yeah, for my company, we didn't do much pairing at all. I think similar situation with a smaller company. When I was offboarding though, I did a bunch of pairing with someone else, and that was a really great way to transfer knowledge. But it was hard. Like I found some struggles when we had kind of open-ended questions where it's like we don't like neither of us really knew what to do about a problem. It definitely made the pairing session like a lot more ambiguous and a lot harder to like push through. And I'm hoping with Shopify we do a lot more pairing. So
yeah, that's super interesting. So there are some companies that pair as a rule, like they always pair when they're doing work. I have not ever worked for a place like that. Let's see, at my current job, we will often, like if we're going to be starting a big chunk of work, like maybe something like this project, right? That's broken up into a number of stories or a number of issues. We'll get together at the beginning to talk through our ideas and set a direction for like the overall architecture. And then for me, real pairing happens if I get stuck on something. I'll reach out all of the time and just like holler in my Slack channel, and then like jumping on calls to helping, like to help other people too. I think that's where we pair quite a bit if we get stuck on something, just to help us talk about ideas and to troubleshoot and just get another set of eyes. So that's how I use pairing the most, like usually at the beginning of a project to talk through stuff, and then getting stuck and kind of bouncing off ideas. Or maybe if you have an idea and you think, oh, is this kind of a wild idea? Maybe I want to run it by somebody first before I spend too much time implementing it. And they're like, no, that's not a good idea, Lauren. So maybe I'll do that too.
I'll share these links on our Slack too as well for all different resources for pair programming.
Ooh, maybe during office hours, you could do the live share demo.
Oh yeah, I can do that this week.
Yeah, that would be cool to show. I use live share sometimes, and sometimes I also find that it like kicks you off of the live share a lot, and it drives me crazy. But it's kind of fun. It's like you're working in the same, it's like somebody else is working in your editor at the same time that you're coding. It's fun. Excellent. Jonathan is going to talk about the issues for this coming week. Thank you, Louis.
sure am. Thanks, Lois. All right. That's hooks. Okay, so I was having a look at the project board and was wondering if it's ordered, because I see 7 all the way down the bottom. So I'm assuming we're going to go via 7 and 8 and not this ordering here. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, cool. So we have 7. As a user, I want to see welcoming prompt to add my first item if my list is empty to help me get oriented to how the app works. So acceptance criteria is with the list view, when there are no items to display, we should see a prompt, for example, a button for the user to add their first item. And just to remind everyone, our pairings are Team Canada and Team Baltimore for this upcoming week, which is amazing. Yay. I love that. Should I go through both issues first and then?
Sure.
And then issue 8, as a user, I want to mark an item on my shopping list as purchased so the app can learn how often I buy different items. So acceptance criteria for this is user is able to tap a checkbox or some similar UI element to mark an item in the list as purchased. And then item should be shown as checked for 24 hours after the purchase is made. In other words, we assume the user does not need to buy the item again for at least 1 day. Cool. Does anyone have any preferences?
Daria, unless you would prefer to do 7, I would like to try 8 out.
Yeah, sure. I accidentally touched number 7 before. That's why my name is on it.
We can do 7 if
No. I would
if
love
that's
to,
what the fates have. Okay, yeah, we can do
I
the
would
8.
love to try
Okay.
8.
Okay, so
Cool.
Canada's is issue 8. Sorry, shouldn't call you Canada.
Cool. Looks like Team Baltimore's issue 7.
Right, Baltimore 7, Canada's 8. Issue 8 is a hard one. There are at least 2 issues that deal with dates, and this is one of them. So use milliseconds for your dates. I'm just going to tell you right now. I want to save you a lot of headache. It'll be a lot easier.
Yeah. Are there any questions around the issues?
Oh, yes. I'm assuming I believe we've been provided with some resources for the checkboxes and whatnot.
Yep.
Like the wireframes?
No, I think it's the images. So if you go back, oh, maybe it's not. I thought there were little, because it kind of.
So there's the add item one and then list populated. Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So yeah, don't worry about the color right now on those checkboxes. That's coming up later. It's really just the checkbox and the item name for this issue.
In the file, there is in public, there is an image folder. And it's the same, design as the one that the original, what's that, XYZ by, yeah, so if you I don't know if you can click on one of those. But like,
check one.
There are some that are like very, so yeah, if you click on groceries, I think the groceries would be like, yeah, something like that. We have to use that, or that's just a suggestion kind of thing?
Yeah, you don't have to use, no, you don't have to use that.
Great questions. Cool. That's it. That's all I have for you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Nice work this week. What do I want to say? I'll post, of course, the peering threads in our channel, and I'll post the YouTube video coming up. And I look forward to seeing you work later this week and talking to you later this week. Have a good one, everyone.
All right, bye-bye.
John, have a
Yeah.
good luck this week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.